Alright, let's see what's happening in the world of entertainment. Wait, what? The Acolyte has been cancelled? I'm sure the response to this on social media is perfectly rational. Let's see what people are saying. So Jacob says, massive day for incel YouTube channels with under 10k subscribers, making the worst clickbait and problematic videos you've ever seen. Wait, is this Cancel Joe's burner account? Because I feel personally attacked. On another note, I think it's time to go to work. Let's discuss.
I watch so you don't have to.
All I'm offering is the truth, nothing more.
Deadline is reporting that the story of the Acolyte will not continue, with Lucasfilm opting to not proceed with a second season of the Star Wars offshoot. The Acolyte is officially cancelled. No Season 2 for the Disney Plus Star Wars series. Now, a rational thinking person and a longtime fan of the Star Wars franchise would not be surprised by this news. The series already had minimal interest from general audiences, mostly due to the damage that had already been done to the Star Wars brand prior to this show existing. Couple that with the fact that the Acolyte itself did very little to convince anyone that this was something worth getting invested in. And all of this led to low streaming numbers, which is ultimately the deciding factor when it comes to whether or not a show continues or not. This is the way that most of Hollywood works. It is a business-first mentality, like it or not.
Their feelings.
The bottom line is all that matters to these companies, and there just wasn't enough interest to justify a Season 2. And anyone not being blinded by their fan goggles should have seen this coming. Even if by some chance you are one of the people who enjoyed The Acolyte, even you cannot deny that the show was divisive. And in most cases, a divided fan base doesn't mean good things for the brand that you are a fan of. This isn't a conspiracy. This isn't Disney caving to the toxic fans. This was a business decision. But that hasn't stopped some people on social media from having absolute meltdowns over this news. And this is something that I will never understand. I can understand being disappointed. There have been shows that I really enjoyed in the past that were cut down in their prime without a finale, and yet somehow I didn't go on social media crying about it. You don't see me making excuses for the project that was cancelled. It's just the way that things work. It's part of entertainment, it always has been, and it always will be. To get this worked up over a show like The Acolyte shows me just how disconnected from reality most of these people are. Like Flash on X, who responded to the news by saying, "Genuinely feels like this is going to be the biggest mistake Star Wars makes in decades." I hate to break it to you, Flash, but the biggest mistake as a brand that Star Wars has made in decades happened back in 2012, when Disney acquired the once cinematic juggernaut and ran it right into the ground. And The Acolyte getting cancelled can be linked back to that moment. Not just because The Acolyte probably wouldn't have existed without that acquisition, but also because that was the definitive moment when most people knew that Star Wars would never be the same. And the fundamental misunderstanding of what Star Wars is by Disney Lucasfilm is what divided this fan base and caused a lot of people to completely lose interest in the brand.
I don't care!
So if you want to blame someone, blame the people in charge who are shitty at their jobs. Next we have Matt on X, who says, Star Wars continues to fold under the pressure of the worst, smallest, loudest part of this fan base. This is so wildly disappointing. Such a shameful move on Disney's part to abandon great stories and storytellers because of trolls. The Acolyte deserved better.
You serious?
No, Matt. The fans are who deserves better. Assuming people with standards are the type of fans that you actually have a problem with here, Let me ask you this. If those who criticize the Acolyte are in fact the vocal minority, as you are suggesting, then that would mean by your logic that the largest portion of this fan base loved the Acolyte and wanted to see it continue. But if that was the case, Matt, why didn't the ratings reflect that? This show should have been a smash hit if all it was missing was the admiration of a small group of people who chose to be critical. What's ironic is that the show would have had even worse ratings if people like myself stopped watching like you wanted us to. Don't like it, don't watch it. Well, it appears that some people took you up on that proposition. It's not a shameful move by Disney to cancel the Acolyte. It was a shameful move by Disney to make the Acolyte in the first place. And it's even more shameful that someone like you can call yourself a fan, yet you can't take your head out of your ass long enough to realize that this was far from a great story from great storytellers. Next we have Jack on X, who said, "Canceling the Acolyte is one of the worst decisions ever. It was a series that was finally pushing Star Wars into new, fresh directions, and was up for an even better second season. But a bunch of babies couldn't handle that, and now we'll be stuck with more of the same forever." I don't know how to break this to you, Jack, but the Acolyte was already more of the same from Disney Lucasfilm. The Acolyte was not pushing the franchise into new and fresh directions. What it was doing was taking what came before from much more talented creators and trying to deliberately undermine it. The Acolyte was like when a child finally gets a hold of his friend's cool toy and then breaks it out of spite. Many of the canon-breaking, lore-breaking decisions in the Acolyte were very intentional. And I do believe to this day that there were ulterior motives behind them. And Season 2 was set up to break canon even further with more lazy teen fiction bullshit. And finally we have Amy on X, who says, "I'm really tired of sharing the franchise I love with toxic, misogynistic, immature racists and constantly seeing them being catered to. Even though the rest of us have been here all along, wanting new and fresh stories that connect deeply with all of us."
Bullshit.
Ice on X shared these sentiments by saying, "Congrats, Bigots. You won. How does it feel?" Wow, the cope is actually crazy right now. But do you know what I'm tired of? I'm tired of being called a bigot or whatever other meaningless title you want to throw at me simply because I want what's best for this franchise that I love. Me, who has actually been here since the beginning. What social media bubble are these people living in where they believe and are convinced that anyone who didn't like this show was a bigot? How have we not moved past this narrative at this point? Oh, that's right, it still exists because people like Amy have actually been catered to for far too long, both by the content that Lucasfilm is producing and by their horde of closed-minded followers on social media. Your Twitter bubble is not real life. It is a safe place for you to attract more people who will validate your opinion. And when someone comes along who thinks for themselves and sees this show for what it actually is, all of a sudden it's time to deflect. It's time to start dismissing those valid criticisms.
That's racist.
I'm tired of sharing this fandom with people like Amy who can't hear a difference of opinion and refuse to hold Lucasfilm accountable for anything. It's your fault that we can't have nice things, because you choose to live your life blissfully ignorant. I don't personally take pleasure in the Acolyte getting cancelled, because whether this show existed or not, it would not impact my life in the slightest. But people like this have this weird personal connection to this awful show, and now they are lashing out like children when they don't get what they want. If you would have spent more time supporting this show than you did going on social media and calling people bigots, then it might not have been cancelled. But we all know the deal. We've seen this a million times before. Social media is filled with fake manufactured hype. Because when it comes time to nut up or shut up, these projects that some of these people swear by typically underperform. Maybe you should stop looking for someone to blame and start blaming yourself.
Y'all be cool. Shut up.